In today's episode, I chat with Rob Graves about the realities of running and scaling an estate agency, from experimenting with a flat fee model to building systems that free up time and improve profits. Rob shares lessons and mistakes that independent estate agents can learn from. Hope you enjoy the episode. Rob, thank you for coming on the podcast. I feel like it's been long overdue.
It's great to be here, Chris. Thank you very much for inviting me. Well, for those like me, or did I bully my way on? I bullied my way on. But let's be brutally honest here.
You kindly messaged me on social media and said, Chris, can I come on the podcast? I thought, yeah, of course, why not? It's probably about time we got each other on each other's podcast, so why not? So talk me through. So people don't follow you on social media, haven't seen you kind of posting online, sort of what are you all about? What's been your history in the estate agency world?
Well, what I'm about at the moment, Chris, is I have a key coaching. That's all about helping estate agents to run a business. So my thing really is about being a business consultant. It's just that I specialize in estate agency. I think they're two separate skill sets. Being a great estate agent doesn't necessarily mean you're a great business owner.
Oh, I love the sound of that. It sounds like this is going to be like a busman's holiday for me, boss. It's right on my street. Talk me through how we've got to this point. So obviously, you're operating in the space you're at the moment. You've got an estate agency background, so sort of talk us through that.
So I started out like most of us did at 18 when I left school with my A levels, looking for a job. And I started out. I was brought up in Leicester, so I started there, and then I moved to London. And as an 18-year-old, and took up a job in a state agency in London, and sort of pinged around there within the different corporates. I started out with a company called Redman and Company. That got bought by General Accident. That then turned into Your Move. And I did a couple of spells at different places. I've worked new homes. I worked for Barrett's. And then I worked for Barnard Marcus in West London and ended up running 17 branches in West London, well, South and West London for Barnard Marcus, which was the Sequence Group. And I then moved to Devon to get away from that long hours, young family thing. And I actually worked for a bank for 6.5 years. Started out with Bank of Scotland Investment Services, and then transitioned to Lloyds Banking Group as they bought them out during the banking crisis in 2008. And then I set up my own little business and went from there. So that's my potted history, Chris.
Fantastic. So you've kind of been there, done that, got the t-shirt to say the least.
Yeah, I'm old enough for all that.
What drew you back to the estate agency world? So you kind of left to go into sort of the banking world and move in that direction. What kind of drew you back to coming back into the estate agency world later on?
Brutally honestly, I hated working at the bank, and my boss was like a prize dickhead. So he was going to fire me anyway. So I left to set up my own little business, and I went back to a estate agency. It's a bit tricky starting up your own bank. So I thought it was probably easier if I start up my own estate agency business.
Only hard if you're not, is it Dave Fishwick? He's the guy. Good. So talk me through kind of the journey. Because obviously you launched, was it Smart Estate Agents? It was back in 2014 sort of direction.
That's right. Yep. You've done your homework.
I have indeed, yeah. And I know kind of back then it was very much a sort of, how can I put this? It was kind of a, I would say online sort of deal going on, sort of fixed fee, sort of sell online. This sort of, it was very much sort of focused towards, the internet is the future. Everyone's going to buy online. How do you think your kind of view has changed over time? Because obviously back then it was kind of a flat fee and it was very much sort of, the internet is the way forward. Kind of knowing what you know now, how do you kind of say your view has changed on that?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the rest of the world is doing what I did now under the brokerage models. But I did it before there was brokerage models and just set up my own little estate agency business that was just me on my kitchen table, and off I went. So that's how I started. And instantly I worked out pretty quickly that cash flow was an issue. Cash flow for a business is like the oxygen. Without it, you're dead. So I went for charging upfront fees and doing a flat fee so that I could get an instant cash in. But very quickly, I became a victim of my own success, as in you create a load of work, you get very busy, and then I had to recruit people, and suddenly I worked out I wasn't charging enough in order to afford to pay somebody and pay myself. So you just evolve and adapt, and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, fantastic. And so when did you when did you take the loop? What was kind of the last sort of position you held before you kind of jumped into more of the sort of the coaching slash business side of things?
Oh, I just well, my business was very geared around property management. Again, I recognise the value in an estate agency business isn't in the sales business, unfortunately. It's very much in that contractual, reoccurring income that happens within property management. So we had about 1,000 properties under management at the point when I sold it. So yeah, I ran the property management division for the business. We had a couple of offices as well. Um, we did a lot of acquisition. So we bought about 4 businesses.
And I know you've talked historically about the kind of the feeling that a lot of us self-employed estate agents out there have a job rather than a business. So talk
Yeah.
me through kind of what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I think what happens is well, it's a bit like any business, is you don't really know what your business is. So if you take just you and I, Chris, so we like to coach. The bit we really enjoy is sitting with people, helping them, support them to grow their business, right? That's the bit I bet you love the most. And that actually represents probably about 20% of your business. And the rest of the time, it's all about getting customers, marketing, all that other stuff, creating cash flow, all that stuff that comes with running a business. And I think lots of people don't realize that. And that they end up, like I say, they just end up with lots of other bosses. They end up running around doing everything themselves. Whereas actually, and I did that, I made exactly those same mistakes. I charged too little, I ran round, I was involved in everything, I didn't delegate properly, I didn't make my staff responsible for the jobs that I gave them, all that sort of stuff. And that's the difference for me between running a business and just having a job.
And do you think there's a naivety, I suppose, in some cases? Because I appreciate that lots of self-employed brokers out there are quite proactive, should we say, with regard to their recruitment strategies. And the conversation would almost go, "You're a great estate agent, mate. You know, you're listing 10 houses at the moment. Well, if you were just listing 2 houses on your own sort of thing, you could make £10,000 a month instead of £2,000 a month." But then obviously the other part of that coin is actually the business side of it and the marketing side of it, and also the other 80% you mentioned just now, which is actually getting the phone ring to get those people actually on the sort of hook first of all.
Yeah, I mean, so I was naive when I did it. I had no idea. I had no I assumed I'm a pretty good estate agent, I'll be alright. And then on day one, you're sitting there with your laptop going, "Well, now what? Like, who do I ring? What happens now?" And off you go from there. So for me, I've been very fortunate and I've managed to develop those skills over I mean, I started my own business quite late in life, Chris. I was 47 when I started my business. So again, I was probably in a bit of a rush, to go from standing start in my kitchen to a couple of £1 million turnover, couple of branches, over 1,000 properties under management in 9 years is probably pretty fast going. So I had to learn quickly, and that's probably what been the advantage really. I had to adapt really quick.
And I know one of the things you sort of preach might not be the right word, but suggest is that agents.
No, I'm a preacher, Chris. You can call me out for that.
Maybe we can preach it. One of the things you preach very strongly is about agents knowing their numbers. And what are the core numbers that an agent should look at to take a step back from their business and once a month, once a year, whatever it may be, look at their sort of figures and what are the main ones they should be looking at and what are sort of the red flags they should be taking aware of?
Okay, well, the main one that everybody should look at is profit margins. And I bet you a number of people will not know their profit margins who are listening. Certainly when I go in and see businesses, starting at that point. But it's about all your numbers, Chris, all the way down. So we work to a profit margin. I had a target on my profit margin of 30% of turnover to be profit. So I knew all the time. And again, likewise, my costs, I understood that staffing costs represented about 30% as well. And I knew if I was paying more than 30% and it not getting the end result from that, I probably wasn't working my staff efficiently enough or didn't have the processes and procedures in place that I should have done. So I knew every single number, all the way back down to market appraisals, what my conversion rate of market appraisal to instruction is. 61%, Chris, just in case you wanted to know. And then I knew what my conversion rate was from instruction to sale, and I knew what percentage of those made it to completion, and I knew what my average fee was. Yeah, I knew every number. I could even tell you 167 leaflets to get a call.
So I guess the dream situation for any business is to be able to twist the dial or turn up a knob, whatever you want to metaphor you want to use here, and go, I know that if I spend £200 over here, £500 over here, £1,000 over here, that is going to boil down to 10 phone calls, 5 market appraisals, 2 instructions, 1 sale, 1 completion sort of thing. I guess that's the ultimate goal here.
It is, but it's not just that, because a lot of it is about time as well. Actually, the most expensive thing you have is time. Once that's gone, it's gone. So one of the interesting things is if you change a process or a procedure, if you do something different, you don't know whether it's made a difference unless you look at the data. And the number of times, and again, I get this with customers, a client will say, "Oh, I don't know what to do with that negotiator. I don't know whether we keep them or we give them another 3 months probation," for example. And they're chatting away about opinions. And I'll go, "Well, what are their numbers?" And they all look at each other and nobody knows. And I go, that's unfair, isn't it? You're making a judgment on opinions and not looking at the data and being really clear. And maybe if you showed them the data, they wouldn't even get in this position where everybody wouldn't know. Because I don't believe anybody turns up to fail. I think because they don't know, because we're not clear enough, sometimes that's allowed to happen.
Is it a case that people don't know their numbers, therefore their next default setting is kind of their emotional brain on it, and they go, "Oh, he seems like a nice guy. He seems like he's working hard, sort of thing. He's all right, sort of thing." Because if you haven't got those numbers to kind of look at and go, how many calls have they made, how many market appraisals they booked, what they're kind of making our company or costing our company, then sort of the next default sort of line in the sand there is, well, how do you think he's doing?
Yeah. Well, but I think that's almost not a default. That's the first place that people go to. And that's the mistake. I think the numbers are everything. The data will tell you. Just look at the numbers, it'll tell you.
And is there this is probably more from personal interest now, is there a key metric that you would look at for an individual team member and go, this is the return on investment I should be getting off the back of that person coming in? So I'm paying Bob £30,000 to sit on that desk in the corner. I should be making insert blank amount off Bob or back of it.
Yeah, £100,000, 30%.
Okay.
Just as straightforward as that. And when your costs go higher, you've got something wrong with your staff and you need to go back and have a look at it. And when you've got something lower than that, and I've managed to do that, you're probably pushing them a bit too hard. You probably need to look at more stuff. And it really is just a number, Chris. It's phenomenal, isn't it?
You strike me as a man who knows his way around an Excel spreadsheet.
Well, I'm not very good with Excel spreadsheets. I'm normally pretty good. I'll tell you what I'm really good with, a P&L.
Yep.
And it is true to say, because you've done this, haven't you? You've been like an area manager looking after a number of branches. So when you're looking after 17 branches, I could sit with a spreadsheet and know what had gone wrong, which process somebody had dropped in an office 20 miles down the road just by looking at the numbers.
So talk me through. So I know you've distilled your coaching into 7 principles, and without spoiling the illusion of the podcast, I'm gonna have to read this because I definitely can't remember all 7. So being whether I can, Chris, be known for something, build trust, have a plan, know your numbers, review, refine, repeat, start with the end in mind, and to stay excitingly consistent.
Yeah.
Which one of those do you think agents neglect?
Well, again, I don't want to go through all of them because you will be here for hours. But even when you start with the first one, be known for something. I did an exercise, Chris, and I asked agents to come back to me across social media to say, so what is it you're known for? 90% of them told me we're honest. Now, I've got to be. I sort of think that's a prerequisite, isn't it? Do you really believe your customers are going to get excited about being known for being honest? I think that's agents looking at themselves rather than looking at the customer. So yeah, I think we get the first bit so wrong. And once you get the first bit right and you decide, the others need to work with it. Your processes and procedures need to be guided by those things. And I think that's where people go wrong. It becomes disjointed rather than thinking, well, how does somebody who's known for being, well, if you want to say trusted or something like that, how do they do viewings? What does that process look like to be the most trusted? And then you reverse engineer it so that it needs to affect everything and needs to come together. That's the bit I think that's missing. I think some people do one bit of it or another bit of it, but they don't put it together so it all compounds against each other.
What would be a good answer? So with those agents you sent away and say, let us know something that you want to be kind of known for, what would be something they could come back with and you were like, yes, high five, you've nailed this exercise. That's a really good answer. And we can then that's a really good basis to kind of form the rest of the business around.
Yeah, so normally let me try and think of some of my clients or what they come back, because some of them have come back with absolute gems. I mean, being experts is always a classic one. I'm trying to wrap my brains at the moment, Chris. I'm trying to think of a really good one that came out. I mean, the other classic one is everything we do is about trying to achieve the best price. I actually quite like Foxton's one. Have you seen Foxton's?
Haven't, no.
We get it done.
Okay. Very, very Ron Seal school of marketing.
Yeah, but everything they do is about getting it done. I think that's probably they probably spent an awful lot of money on a big marketing company to come up with that for them. But you can tell it's a really good quality one. I mean, everything they do is about that, isn't it? They're open longer hours than everybody else so that they can get things done. They have a receptionist on the desk so that their guys aren't interrupted constantly, so they can get things done. It's not just a tagline, it genuinely appears to be built into their processes and procedures and everything they do.
I was going to say, I always imagine when you have a really expensive marketing company, you're like, guys, you've got £1 million budget, set this marketing thing up, and you're like, we want something really amazing for this. And they come back in the room and go, we're doing, let's get it done, or we get it done. You're like, that's like 5 words or something. Like, how would do that? What's the pound per word on that?
Yeah. Well, it's Nike's Just Do It. I've got a mate
Yeah.
who works in London in advertising, funny enough, and he does all that sort of stuff, and he gets paid a fortune
But there you go.
for a few words.
We're in the wrong industry, apparently.
Absolutely.
So from sort of different sides of the coin. So obviously you've been on sort of the fixed fee sort of model side of things, and obviously now you're focusing more on sort of the increasing profitability and making business as much money as possible.
Yeah.
How would you advise that clients kind of maintain the fee they want to achieve when there is downward pressure in the market? Because there's always someone in town who's charging 0.75%, or Bob will do it for 1%.
Yeah.
How do you suggest that agents keep those fees sort of intact without undermining the profitability of their business?
But again, it comes back to that be known for something, because then you attract customers who value that. If you're dealing, because we've all had it, Chris, we've all had that client that you work with and nothing you do is right for them. You're doing exactly the same as you do for the other customers. The other customers love it, and you've got this one that's moaning about it. I believe what's happened there is they just don't see value in the stuff that you're producing. So as long as you're clear about what you do, and I think one of the key things is, again, this comes back down to this profitability. Saying yes to everything's a mistake, isn't it? You see these guys just, and we're all, when I first started, I certainly did it. I drove 30 miles to a little cottage in a village in the middle of Devon just to get another instruction. But actually, that's just not a practical or profitable way to do it. You're far better off sticking to a few really good quality properties. And a question I would ask, and I do ask people, when was the last time you said no to an instruction? And that's how you drive up your fees, because people won't pay it. And we also always know that those that pay the cheapest fees are typically the biggest pain in the ass. You're just inviting grief, aren't you?
Do you think that comes with the maturity of a business? So you mentioned that yourself, obviously, when you first launched, driving long distance, getting instruction, for example. So sort of, your default answer when you first launch pretty much any business is, you've got a doorbell and a pulse. Like, congratulations, you're my ideal customer. Whereas as the business evolves over time, you're a bit like, well, actually, if it's not at 1.5%, I'm not interested. Or actually, if you're a bit of a dick on the phone call, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. So you think that's a maturity thing about business?
Yeah, but again, what comes with business, with maturity, is you get more options. Once you've been going for sort of 3 years, people start coming back to you. You start getting known. I still can't walk around Tesco's without bumping into an ex-client or,
Mm.
you know. That's just the deal. So I think that two things happen. You get more choice over time, and when you've got more choice, you can afford to be a bit fussier. But you can drive that environment so that you get more choice. Certainly, a couple of the guys that I'm working with have really managed to drive that in.
Mm. If you were a small agency, listen to this, or a one person band, for example, and you wanted to get started with sort of looking at the profitability of your business and starting to know your numbers and kind of where the baselines are currently for your business, what's a good place to start?
Well, in terms of your numbers, again, most people, when we do numbers, you'll remember this from the old days of doing a business plan. You start out with your number at the top at the end of it all, and you engineer your way backwards, don't you? And then typically you build in a bit of slack along the process so that you get there. So if you want to earn 100 grand, then you need to work out, well, what's my average fee? The other one with those brokerages models I do find is they forget they have to give 30% of it away to somebody else, and they count the whole fee. We'll start with that. They forget they have any costs. That's a classic one I see. And they need to build all that in to the numbers at the beginning. So how many market appraisals am I going to have to do each week? How many sales am I going to have to do? How many instructions am I going to have to do?
I think that, well, something that I do a lot in my business is, can I sit down with a calculator? Could I work out with a spreadsheet? Yes, I absolutely could do. Can I copy and paste my entire P&L into ChatGPT? Absolutely. And you can just sit back and say, right, here's my figures for the last sort of 2, 3, 4 years or so. What's my profit margin? What's my gross margin? What am I spending to get a client, sort of thing? What am I spending? Like, what's the income, sort of thing? So I think even just to start off, if you've got a good idea, most people these days have some sort of electronic accounting system, whether it's Xero or Free Agent or whatever it may be. It's quite easy just to download the reports on that, put it into your local bit of AI and say, how am I doing? Benchmark this. Where am I leaking money and where am I doing really well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's quite simple now, isn't it, to do that sort of stuff?
And I think
Yeah, I
that,
can't believe you put it into ChatGPT though. I could do it in my head by looking at it.
yeah, does it do it? But why burn calories thinking when a computer can burn bottled water for you, sort of thing, his mindset on it. So
I see all these articles that say AI is going to make us stupid in the future.
yeah, it's starting with me. So I absolutely go through that. So I think the one of the things that probably gets missed in this situation, one thing that actually certainly I noticed when I went through this process is obviously over time you get sort of a business creep with regard to, in the same way that you have personal creep, which is where, as your pay packet increases, as if by magic, you get a nicer car and a nicer house and you go for dinner more and sort of your expenses go up at the same time. Do you see that lots of businesses sort of as their income increases, also their spending increases as well?
No, I actually see it as the other way round. Normally, people are inviting me in because they've got good turnover, but they haven't got anything left at the end of the month. 31st of January comes up and corporation tax turns up, and they suddenly get a bill and they go, shit, I haven't got the money in my account. How the hell did that happen? So I think a lot of people spend it before they've got it, Chris.
Yeah.
And I think they look at the end. This is a bit to do with lots of us came through corporate world, and we were driven to just increase turnover, just get turnover working. Certainly corporate world it is now. Probably because I was a bit older, I got paid a profit margin by my corporate business. So even as a youngster, I'd honed in on profit at a very early stage.
Is it a case that lots of estate agencies are overspending and there's actually quite a lot of efficiencies in their outgoings effectively? So, I mean, the number of times I've had a conversation with a client and they've gone, "Oh yeah, I'm paying for this service. Oh yeah, but I'm also paying for these two other services." And I'm like, "They're the same thing. Like you're paying three times over for something." And do you use that first one? Yeah, I don't use that one at all. Like, why don't we just delete all of them? So, is there a case of sort of a housekeeping exercise to go, actually, what do we actually use that we're spending money on? And what are we actually doubling up on where actually we just need one instead of two of them?
Well, a funny thing happens. Obviously, I'd had my business over COVID. And when you get told, right, go home, you're not going back to work, and you've got a business, you think, shit, this could be the end. So there were two really important exercises I did. I cancelled every standing order and direct debit from the business account. Every single one, just cancelled them all. I wanted to protect what cash was in the bank for my business. And then the next thing I did was ring every tenant and tell them their responsibilities about paying their rent. to make sure the revenue was coming in. But then when I switched them back on, because the world settled down within a couple of weeks, so I carried on paying, everybody had to pay. Obviously, as you rightly say, I came across one or two and thought, I don't really need that. What am I doing with that? So yeah, that exercise probably is worth doing. But more of it tends to be about inefficiencies are lost. Again, it comes down to time, comes down to people, what they're doing, and the processes. More of it comes down to getting those bits of things done, that they're not getting the returns for the effort they're putting into it.
So you've talked before about people getting their freedom of being a business. It all seems very counterintuitive, doesn't it? You work for a boss from 9 to 5. You're like, oh, screw these guys. I'm working too hard. And then you go and work for yourself and you're working like 8 in the morning until 10 at night.
Yeah.
So for sometimes less money for long periods of time. So we talked about sort of growing your time away from the business, having some sort of work-life balance.
Yeah.
At what stage should agents look at it and go, actually, I'm now 6 months old, a year old, 18 months old. I've got this much money coming in. I can now afford to bring help on board, whether that's a VA, a PA, any kind of admin help behind the scenes. At what stage should an agent be sitting there going, actually, I can start buying back my time here?
I think they should do it as soon as possible, because as long as you reinvest that time, you'll do this, Chris, I'm sure. You make far more of a difference by working on your business than doing than doing the actual coaching. You make bigger differences by, I don't know, producing a new product that you're going to sell. You make bigger differences by changing your fee structure, and therefore you want to change the service level that you provide for those fee structure. Those sort of things make a much bigger difference than taking the Joneses round to see their house for the third viewing. So, yeah, get off the tools and work on the business as quickly as you can. And anything that supports you to do that, do it. Most people are the other way around. Most people don't get help soon enough. They wait till they're swamped before they get help. So in the brokerage world, I see that a lot.
Yeah, I think the most common bit of feedback I hear all the time is, I wish I did this sooner. If I knew what I knew now, I would have got a team member 6 months ago.
Yeah. Whether it be pick up your sales progression, don't get me on that one, by the way. Do you know why estate agents do sales progression? Because they don't tie the bloody sale up properly in the first place. If they tied the sale up properly, they'd have to do half the sales progression.
So you've been very generous for your time. So I've got one more question for you, if that's okay. So if there's one bit of advice you give anyone to make their agency more profitable and less stressful, what would that be?
Know your numbers.
Rob, thank you for coming today. You've been an absolutely amazing guest. Thanks so much. And we'll have to have you back in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Chris.
Appreciate it. Cheers, Rob.